This is a decision based on rigorous debate, on science, and on evidence. We have not been and will not be swayed by political arguments.
So, what to make of all this? Quite possibly the biggest decision that Justin Trudeau has made since becoming Prime Minister more than a year ago. Time for a special mini at issue. Andrew is here in Toronto. Chantal is in Montreal. So how do you rate how the government made its argument today in terms of the strength of that argument? Andrew.
Well, first of all, it's the right decision, I'll just say in passing, but I think it was very skillfully presented. There's been much build-up to this, of course, with the government establishing its environmental bona fides on a series of issues. And as a result, I think they've been able to sort of split the difference between the carbon pricing, anti-climate change position and the pro-pipeline position. They've been able, I think, additionally, it was quite clever to have announced both Kinder Morgan and the Gateway decision on the same day and split the difference between those two. And as a result, I think they've also wrong-footed both the NDP and the Conservatives on this. The NDP are very divided now on this, and you could see them clasping Rachel Notley to their bosom for that reason. Conservatives now have to deal with the dilemma that the Liberals may wind up getting pipelines built that they were unable to. But it's a big political risk, and you could see, I was struck by how personally invested the Prime Minister was, putting his own personal reputation on the line, talking about how he'd spent many years in BC. If this blows up in his face, it'll be very damaging.
All right. Well, we'll talk about the risk in a second. Chantal, do you agree as skillfully put forward today?
As skillfully put forward as was possible. Not that I'm sure that it will make a difference one way or the other. It was clever up to a point to showcase Rachel Notley. Clearly, the Liberals believe that she's essential to their climate change initiative. It does look like the kind of bargain that Justin Trudeau said he was going to try to strike when he was campaigning, and almost for as long as he was Liberal leader. I noticed that the word social license, as in acceptability on the ground, did not feature very highly in whatever he had to say. So I think it was the expected announcement, and there is nothing more that they could have done. I'm not convinced that it's going to get them where they want to get.
Well, let's deal with the risk issue here, because some say the risk is that it's never going to get built. There's too many obstacles in the way of that happening. Others see it in terms of the political risk to the government itself. Which is the greater risk here?
The risk that it doesn't get built is a risk to the company, but the first risk is that the momentum of the opposition movement, which is going to be very concentrated and very easy to orchestrate, is going to make Justin Trudeau look like he's really hit upon a losing proposition. It's one thing to talk up Rachel Notley, but there was dead silence about that other Premier Clark in British Columbia, who's going to be going in an election and whose main opposition, the NDP in British Columbia, has already taken a stance against the decision. Now, Christy Clark, through her minister, is still on the fence. I think she wants to see where this is going to go in public opinion. But if all leaders in that province turn against this project, or if it becomes a referendum on the project in the provincial election, and the other side wins, Trudeau is going to be very isolated.
Andrew?
There's no doubt that there'd be some people who would be opposed to any pipeline ever for any reason, and there's nothing you can particularly do with that crowd. I think it's also true that Trudeau himself and the Liberals have helped to add to some of that by some, I think, irresponsible rhetoric in the past, talking about social license, as Chantal mentioned, as if this was something independent of the rule of law. At times seemed to suggesting that Native groups would have something beyond a right to consult, but something closer to a veto, again, not supported by law. And thirdly, they very clearly said that that Kinder Morgan was going to be subjected to a whole new process of review, which they clearly have not done. So some of that fire that they're going to face is self-created. All that being said, I have to guess that the broad mass of the public is closer to where the Liberals are on this than either the hardcore environmentalists or hardcore pipeline people. I think they're probably in the sweet spot, and I would guess even in BC.
You wonder, though, whether they've underestimated the opposition, because on something like this, opposition tends to grow as opposed to, move backwards. We've watched what's happened in the States on the Dakota Access Pipeline in North Dakota. And have they underestimated possibly the risk here, Chantal?
I've read the ministerial panel. That's the process that the Liberals put in place to kind of review the Kinder Morgan process. I've read the result of that ministerial panel. It's not about pipelines and how you get oil. It's not very technical, but for any politician, it reads like a huge storm in the making. It's not just that there are groups that will not accept pipelines, and they are in that report. It is that the breadth of the opposition is much wider than what the previous government would see as the usual suspects. And this is taking place. Ground zero of this is the biggest electoral real estate in British Columbia. I don't think you can divorce that reality from what is going to be happening. So maybe Andrew is right. Maybe Canadians in general are ambivalent about this. But where this pipeline is going, I'm not so sure that people have mixed feelings.
Quick last word, Andrew.
You could fault the Harper government for mishandling this file and building a lot of opposition to it by seeming high-handed. This government has gone to the ends of the earth up to this point to allay people's fears, to address their concerns. At some point, a democratically elected government has to be able to make a decision. At some point, the rule of law has to apply. At some point, the processes that we set up to adjudicate and look into the evidence of this have to be upheld. We cannot simply yield, in this case, to sort of extra-parliamentary, extra-legal opposition.
All right, better leave it at that for tonight. Andrew in Toronto, Chantal in Montreal.